Hello everybody and welcome to the first of our Alumni in Conversation series. My name is Carol Manley and I am Deputy Head of Development and Alumni Engagement at De Montfort University. I am delighted to welcome today a panel of 4 women who have been inspirational in what they've achieved in their careers, and as alumni for DMU, they are very, very proud of that heritage. So I'm delighted to welcome to our panel today. We have Hilary Radley, who emigrated to Canada and has worked in the US and now retired, but set up her own fashion label for outerwear. It created a company that employed over 300 people and now sits on various boards to do with arts and education. We also have Aminata Kamara, who has set up the podcast for the Sista Collective, which is an online platform that celebrates and talks about women and Black women and the voices that they must share and the experiences that they go through. I also have here Dr. Bisna Dazani, who has recently just been awarded an MBE. Bisna has had an outstanding career within finance, receiving many awards along her way, and is now an influential global strategist around finances. And finally, Lorraine Lewis, a barrister with the Crown Prosecution Service, and also the founder of the the Lewis Foundation, which is a charity that supports adults with cancer by providing them with supplies and gifts in hospital. So I am absolutely thrilled to be hosting this event, and having spoken to all 4 of you, I know it's going to be a very lively and engaging conversation. And to kick that off, I'd like to come to you, Lorraine, and ask about the key things for you in overcoming adversity. What have been those key milestones for you along your career?
I think for me, it's having that support network around you. So when people tell you you can't do something, or you're coming across stumbling blocks and it may feel like you can't see the way forward, having those people that are there that will have your back, champion you, tell you to keep pushing and striving forward. For me, I know that's helped me a lot through my legal career and also charity career as well. And so it's finding those people, they help you make a difference.
What were some of the barriers that you overcame, particularly, first of all, with your legal career, Lorraine?
Yeah, sure. So I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer from very young, say 9-10 years old. And my first barrier that I ever identified was when at school being asked what you wanted to do when you're older, and being told that you can't be a barrister because you're a woman and you're Black. And as a young child, it was really hard to take in and hear. And going back to my parents and saying, look, this is what I've been told. Is it true? Am I not going to be able to do this? And they're like, no, being a woman, being Black is not going to stop you from doing whatever it is you want to do and achieving your dreams. And they were fundamental actually in continuing to help me strive forward and letting nobody stop me from getting to that end goal all throughout the whole time, even when people were like, still saying the same thing over and over again. They never let that stop me from achieving my dreams. So I'm so grateful to them both.
And also, we spoke previously about the education that was so important to you, that the additional, you were seeing that you could do more and you were given more opportunity.
Yeah. So when I was at school, there was one teacher who knew that I really actually wanted to achieve this. This wasn't a joke. Was serious to me. And what they used to do is send me to a boys' school, which was a really, really good school in the town that I lived. So they knew that I would be able to get the grades that I needed to get the qualifications to go on and become a barrister, because I never went to the best school. In my school, it was carnage. So if you wanted to learn, it was really difficult. So to have somebody have your back and make sure you get to that boys' school and also get those lessons so you are able then to get your qualification, for someone to believe in you that much, it's amazing to have that. Someone champion your career.
Yeah. And your experience within your legal career then allowed you to springboard over into setting up this charity?
Yeah, I mean, like I'd never thought that running a charity and being a lawyer, that those skills could be transferable at all. The charity came about of my own personal experiences of my mother-in-law going through cancer treatment in hospital. And it was then I identified with my husband, who I set up the charity with, that there's a need to support adults whilst they're going through cancer treatment. Just because we're adults mean we don't need love, we don't need support. We still love gifts. Well, I know I do anyway. So anything to help make people feel that little bit better during this difficult journey, that is what we're set out to do. And the skills that I took from my legal days, like leadership, being able to get and connect with your community. When you're dealing with your legal work and you're in court, you're mixing with all sections of the community. So you need to be able to speak to people at a level, no matter who they are. And it's just things like that you can transfer from this day job of doing law to the charity work. And it makes you the skills that make you a better person in what you do. Well, that's what I found anyway.
Yeah. And finally, my last question on this was, what fascinated me was now the Crown Prosecution Service are saying to you, hang on a second, if you can lead a charity, we want those skills back over here.
Yeah, and I was like, calm down. I don't want to do too much. But yeah, no, it's true. It's like you can bring those skills. I've learned so much through the charity work, things that I didn't even know about myself. And when you're forced into those situations where you don't think you're capable, if anyone had said to me like 10 years ago, you would have been running a charity, I would have been like, you're having a laugh. But it teaches you skills that is so valuable for your future career. So I don't think you can say when you start life, I'm going to be this, and that's all you're ever going to do. You never know where your path's going to take you, but the skills you gain will enable you to do whatever it is that you may want to do in the future.
Yeah, fascinating. Sorry, Hilary, did you want to come in with a question there?
A question. Yes, I mean, did you always knew what you wanted to do, didn't you, Lorraine?
Yeah.
What do you think think's been the most motivating part of your career and life to get you where you are? Is it just that you knew that you loved law, or that you wanted to do other things through law?
I think I knew when I did law, it was always because I wanted to do something to help people. That's what pushed me. I wanted to get justice for victims, because I knew from what I see and how hard it was for people. And I think that's why I like helping people with the charity as well, is still linking that element of helping and wanting to make a difference to people's lives. So I think that's my driving force. I want to help to make a difference to people's lives and make it better.
It must be so satisfying to know that you've been able to do it on so many levels, and you're so young. You're just starting your careers really and your charity. So it's going to go, do you think a lot about what you're going to be doing? Are you planning in stages, or you're just letting it flow, like you said, organically? Or
yeah, for me it's just flowing, and I don't really have a plan. I'm just going to see where it goes, and I'm enjoying the process and the journey, so I'm going to let it take me where it takes me.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Thanks, Hilary.
I think what's interesting for me there in that short discussion is we're talking about commitment and determination and perseverance through all of these barriers that came up. And Aminata, for you, there were some key barriers that you had this innate sense of determination and belief. Could you sort of expand on that core element that drove you forward?
I think growing up, seeing my mum as a single mother raise 3 children by herself. Also, my grandma lived with us. My family originally, I'll tell a little bit. My family originally from Sierra Leone, came here to the UK, lived in London. So my grandma came here first, and she would come backwards and forwards to the UK. But as my grandma got really old, she was living with us permanently. My mum was looking after her, plus looking after all 3 of us. My mum always tells me, so I'm the eldest from my mum, after she had me, after I think it was 6 weeks, she went straight back to work. So all my life, I've seen her do 2, 3 jobs just to make the absolute basic of ends meet. So I've always grown up seeing the strength of a woman, the determination of a woman, the consistency of a woman. No matter how you're feeling, no matter what you face, it's just this sense of, well, I don't have another choice. You know, if I don't do it, my mum always says, well, if I don't do it, who will? So for me, I think my innate drive has come from that being quite normal. So it's very normal for me to want to do something else to make my life better. It's very normal for me to see a situation that's not working and say, right, I'm not going to be downtrodden. I mean, of course, you know, I've had so many moments where I've just had the blanket over my head and I don't want to see the world. I don't want to hear anything. But there's always a point inside me that just tells me, if you don't, who's going to do it for you? Who's going to, you know? And I think one of the key moments in my life, I think my life has been quite straightforward. You know, I can't say I had a bad childhood. My life was what it was. You know, my mum did the best that she could. So I think the point at which my life turned was when I got pregnant. It wasn't something that I planned or I anticipated to happen, but it happened, and it literally turned everything that I thought my life was going to be into something else. And that was very, very difficult. It was really hard to come to terms with, because my life was no longer going to be my own. It was not going to be about me anymore. So I think I've still continued that sense of, I have to do it. I don't have a choice. You know, this is what motherhood is. As much as we are there for ourselves, we've got to be there for our children as well. So it has been a sense of not having a choice and having to plow ahead. And I think that is, it's something that, you know, many women face, not just women, men as well. But I know, you know, for many women, we do carry that load a lot more. And it's a testament to our strength. And I think why, you know, all of us are here today having this conversation.
Yeah. And how did you come to develop the podcast and your work on radio?
So the podcast, it wasn't something that I personally developed. So it was an opportunity that came through the BBC. So I present on BBC Radio Leicester. And I think it's because of all the noise and commotion I've been causing on radio. Someone was like, maybe she'd be great on a podcast that calls for people to have opinions. So that's how that opportunity came about. And it's been powerful, because it's a space for women, Black women, to come together to have honest conversation, vulnerable conversation, light-hearted conversation, stuff that everyone can relate to, really, but it's from a Black woman's perspective. So it's been great to hear stories of different women, similar journeys to me, different journeys to me, different ages, different backgrounds. But I think it's a great reflection of what it means to be Black and British here in the UK.
Yeah, and I think fascinating for me is the story again of what you learned in your childhood, what you learned from your mother, but also breaking down these barriers. And I wonder, Bishna, does this link with you in what you did in, you know, looking at Lorraine's stories? Is there a question or anything there for you, for Lorraine?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I can resonate with both. Aminata and Lorraine on different levels. So Aminata, because British Asian, also come from a single parent family, eldest of 3 siblings, always observed my mum doing at least one job, if not 2. So multiple pickups, drop-offs, taking care of elderly grandparents. Even now, she's a full-time carer. So there's a lot of learnings that come from that. You learn to be independent, you learn to be self-sufficient, and that becomes your aspiration. The other thing is you learn to respect people who work hard and are also independent, and, you know, appreciate the value of what it is that they're working for, especially when you come from you know, a community where it's typically against the norm and you don't really have that support. So I think, you know, lots of interesting learnings there, and I think, you know, going through some of those phases in time helped me to figure out, discipline, to be focused. I started working full time at the age of 16, did all of my education thereafter at night school in parallel. So whilst my peer group was partying and enjoying university life and college life, I was working full time and studying pretty much full time too. And then as a British Indian girl raised to learn to, take care of all household chores and duties that's expected of you, it's quite normal. So it really was like doing multiple things. So I think that's definitely interesting. And I can absolutely, resonate with what Aminata is talking about and the learnings that she's had. I think really it makes you stronger, it makes you driven, it makes you respect not only other women, but other men, and what people go through to be able to balance and achieve what they do in life. I think moving over to Lorraine's example, working in the legal profession is extremely demanding, like my industry, financial services, in its own way, in that, there is a lot where, that there has been precedent. I mean, law speaks for itself. And so things don't change as easily, and you have to go by facts, and we have to go by data in financial services. And so there's a constant learning that goes on. And also from an individual perspective, there's a technical competency, and then there's a kind of developing who you are as a person, developing EQ, learning to read people, learning to read between the lines, between what's said, what's not said, learning to operate and navigate the environments in which we work in our locations, but also in different locations. That partnered with, both of us having, Lorraine has obviously the charity, and for me, it's all about D&I, having the second focus areas that we do that are almost the polar opposites, has been interesting as well, because, as Lorraine said, there are skills that are transferable, but by the same token, you have to know when to switch hats very easily, because you can't be as compassionate in the charity or with the D&I subject, or as empathetic as you may want to be in your office environment, because it just doesn't work. That's not the environment. You're not surrounded by those types of opportunities, because the way of operating is very different. Equally, with both of us being ethnic minority females, the statistics show that we're quite often, women are actually in these industries and professions quite often, anywhere between 12 to 25% in terms of representation when you get to senior levels. So there are less people like you in the room, and then ethnic minorities even less than that. So when you walk into the room and you're with senior decision makers, first of all, you look different. So you stand out, you operate in a different way because of your conditioning, because of who you are, your identity. And so there's a piece today developing, in organizations around understanding intersectionality, around understanding different socioeconomic backgrounds of people, and embracing those lenses of D&I into the business world. But we're not there yet. We have more awareness, but there's a long way to go. And then being female, right? There was an EY report a few years ago that suggested that gender parity for pay is more than 200 years away. It kind of sounds like we still have so much to do in this lifetime. And last year, there was a report by McKinsey looking at women in the workplace, and it said that through the pandemic, women were more likely to be made redundant or be pushed out of their roles because they were doing so many different things just to keep up with the stresses of the pandemic. So, taking the burden of housework, taking extra responsibilities at work, and when you kind of filter that down into women and then ethnic minority women, 35% was the number of women that had actually suffered those consequences. So I think I can relate with both. I've experienced a lot of these different factors in my own trajectory. And I guess what I really want to know is how do you stay true to yourself, Lorraine, when you're, or even Aminata, when you're trying to deal with these paradoxical situations that we have, where you're having to change hats, where you're having to dial up your assertiveness or dial up your empathy and your compassion because you're switching in and out of roles. That's the really important piece for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel I've reached a stage now where I can stay true to myself. So I can't be anybody else but myself. And I think that's really important for people to remember. If this is with me and this is what you're getting, if you don't like it, then I'm sorry, you know where you've got to go. This is me, and you just have to accept me as I am. And I know that's kind of, people will say, oh, that's so easy to say, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes, trust me, because when it was at first, there was no way I would say that. If somebody had said something to me, you would just be like, yeah, okay then, and just stay quiet. But you have to keep pushing through that noise, and every time you say it, your voice gets a little bit stronger and stronger and stronger until it's like, you know, I'm here now, accept me as I am. So I think for people who are worried about that now, that they feel they can't be in that position and that they don't have a voice, you just need to keep building and taking the time to do it, because your voice will be heard eventually and you will get that confidence. Yeah.
And do you feel that, Aminata?
100%. It's difficult. I think I get the battle that people face, and I think one of the main things for me, and this is something that, you know, I feel like I'm currently exploring in my life, is making sure that I'm in the right space where I can be my true authentic space, my true authentic self. You know, being in an environment that chooses me to be there because of me, and not because not because I just fit into a box. And I think it's a challenge when you are working maybe in a corporate space, or even if you're working for a company. There's this difficulty with you fitting in to that environment. So I think you, from the get-go, be your authentic self. You know, I remember going for an interview for a job. I used to work for a young people's charity, and they asked me what my future aspirations are and what I want to do. And I was just honest. You know, I didn't say that, yeah, you know, I want to, you know, work up to the top in your organization, because I didn't, you know, at the time. I didn't want that. I just felt pregnant, you know, it was about, you know, I felt like this is a space where I can learn, where I can grow, where I can, you know, I was very honest with them, and you know, I got the job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to stay true to yourself from the jump. And if you are feeling uncomfortable, pay attention to that. Definitely pay attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all very much for that. Hilary, what fascinates me about listening to Aminata, Lorraine and Bijna is actually how your journey started. Emigrating, being a female that was in the creative industry, which was predominantly all male, and, you know, really treading new ground. You were putting the footsteps in that other people were going to follow. I mean, how does this resonate for you in terms of listening to what the others are saying? Hopefully, first and foremost, it will be, thankfully, times are changing. But what does it spark for you in terms of your whole beginning of that journey?
Well, I think that we all have a lot of commonality between, you know, we all came, I think, with strong mothers, especially Aminata, and I did, even though my mother died when I was 17 and I was orphaned. And I didn't have, other than a wonderful sister, a great invested in, you know, interest in staying in England. I didn't like the class system. I didn't like the fact that sometimes, you know, if your accent wasn't quite right and this and that. And I always loved traveling. And I think I'd known adversity quite young. And I learned to, you know, I had to dig deep. I had to believe in myself. Fortunately, I had a talent, and I went to art school and then to Leicester Polytechnic, as you know. And something resonated with what Lorraine said when she said, if somebody had told her 10 years ago that she would be doing a charity, you know, and I, honestly, if somebody had told me 53 years ago, when I left Leicester, that I would be sitting here now, you know, in Stow-on-Mon, talking to all these wonderful, fabulous alumni, you know, I mean, it was like, you know, I first of all, because my parents died young, I didn't think I would live that long, weirdly enough, you know, and so every year has been like a gift in a sense since my 50s. I always wanted to be financially independent, Carol.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I'd seen my mother struggle after my father died, and how, you know, not having money, you know, and working so hard, you know, and kind of drudgery of life. It really, I thought there's got to be something better, you know, and I want to go out there and grasp it and use my talent. There's a lot of luck along the way. There were a lot of great people who showed me a lot of kindness. And when you go to a country, you know, in the early 70s, you know, you had to write, you know, phone calls were very expensive. I felt a long way away, but my sense of travel, you know, kept me, you know, made a new adventure, kept me going, and meeting great friends and the kindness of people. But I always knew that I could use my talent and make a success, you know, through my work. And I managed, you know, I did that. You know, it took me a long time to get, you know, into my 30s before I really got serious, after a marriage that failed. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, okay, you've had amazing 70s, 20s, you've been traveling in the Far East, working for companies, learning all about import, export, designing. But I knew the one thing I wanted to do was to design clothes for women like me that could identify, you know, with my style, and that I would be successful, I thought, in that, in a bigger sense than what I'd been doing previously. And I was fortunate enough to hook up with a company. And that was my first business venture. I had no business experience. You know, I had the creative side. I had to learn that. And, you know, 3 years ago, I sold my intellectual property, and I've retired. After looking back, I think, wow, you know, sometimes I think, I can't believe I actually did all that, you know, sometimes. And I became a single mother. And I always said, you know, my son was absolutely my best design. And I think when, to Aminata's point, being a parent really grounds you. It really makes you realize, you know, wow, you know, I thought, you know, this is it, you know, now I have this responsibility. And that's when I started to really admire men, because, you know, I had men work for me, very close to me in my design studio, you know, my pattern maker, cutters, and, you know, and I paid their salary, you know, I was there, but and I used to think, you know, they go out every day, they provide for their family. Because I lost my father when I was 11, so I didn't have that role model. But I was like the man, you know, and I became, you know, which women are now. They're juggling so many things, and but being a parent really was the amazing for me. It was very, very hard. I was 40, and I had a full time on, you know, traveling all the time through business as a fashion designer. You know, it is really geared a little bit to women more than, say, financial services or law. You know, I mean, women can make, you know, do things more in fashion, maybe not the business part, but, you know, on the creative side as buyers or whatever. So, but I definitely realized that being a parent, getting back to that, is, you know, is the one thing that was really hard. Much harder than running a business.
Hilary, you said there about you had to dig deep. I kind of want to know a little bit more about that, because I find that every single one of us, no matter the degree of the adversity or the difficulty, we've all gone through something. And I think there potentially may be, you know, someone listening to this. How do you really dig deep? You know, you said there about losing your parents at a young age. You spoke about your marriage breaking down, being a single parent in the midst of all of that happening, setting up a business. How do you really dig deep and say, I'm going through all of this, but I need to keep on going? How do you do that?
Well, I think it's what you said, actually, is you don't have a choice, do you? I mean, what are the choices, you know? And I think it's looking, you know, my inspiration's been my mother, you know. She worked so hard. She was so intelligent. She really didn't get a chance to be educated the way she, you know, to go on to do a profession. And I you know, it's that inspiration that keeps you going when you're really down there and you've had a lot of blows. But it's the blows in life that form the character. And it's not when things are good that carry, you know, it's how you deal with things when they're bad, you know, and that shows, you know, resilience and the ability, you know, and belief in oneself. I mean, I always had a deep belief in my talent. And so, you know, and I always went through a few, you know, quite a few jobs in the 70s, working for big corporations out of New York and Montreal, traveling for them. And I used to look at men, as Carol said, all these men, you know, I was one of the first women buying out in the Far East, you know, and for American companies and negotiating prices and things. And I always used to look and think, I can do what they're doing. You know, they made a big fuss of what they were doing, but you know, when you cut through it, the men, you know, you thought, I can do that, you know, and that's what propelled me to have my own business. You know, I didn't like, you know, that part of working for people that I realized that, you know, women work twice as hard actually at the time, you know, then things have changed a lot, but digging deep is, you know, the resilience.
Yeah, I think that is such a key phrase, digging deep, because it is about that ability to really look at yourself and see where that strength is, particularly when the world around you is a bit like a hurricane. So you feel like this, but you've got to somehow get that stability. For me, one of the core things of that, and it's something that you've all spoken about in a roundabout way that I'd like to come back and actually ask all of you, is what's your key thing around self-discipline for yourself? So we're saying about digging deep, but that in itself is a discipline. That in itself is a characteristic that you have to develop, because if you don't breed resilience, you don't learn, you don't get that wisdom of the mistake or the event that's happened. So just coming back to you, Vijna, where for you are the tricks of the trade, if you like, in your self-discipline?
I have to be honest, still work in progress and trial and error. But, you know, from a very personal perspective, I kind of grew up with the conditioning that you were always being judged. There were always eyes and ears around you. And, you know, being an Indian female, there's a lot of emphasis that gets placed on that. So how you should behave, where you should be, at what time, what you should be doing with your life. What that led me to at some point in my life was accepting wrongs. So whilst I was advocating for rights for women and for everyone else around me, it led me to, in my own life, you know, staying silent and putting up with wrongs, not because I didn't know that they were wrong, but because I felt that if I spoke up or did things differently, there would be a layer of judgment about my character. And, you know, ultimately, that couldn't have lasted, because when you know wrong is wrong, it is, and right is right. And it just did more damage to me, to my life. And, you know, that circumstance is really when everything just fell apart completely. And out of that came, I guess, almost a new version of me, where I decided that, no, you know, if it's incorrect and it's wrong and it doesn't fit with my moral compass, I will not accept that. I will not accept labels. I will not accept judgments. I will not accept the things that are expected of me just because, you know, I'm a female or I belong to a particular sect of society. And I think we all go through that. We grow up thinking that we need to be a certain way because that's expected of us. And ultimately, I think it's up to us to really challenge, is that the right thing? Does it make sense today? Does it make sense for this circumstance? And should I change it? Because by changing it, am I going to do better for myself and for people around me or other people that may go through the process? So like Hilary said, she knew she could do better, and she did. And, you know, it's like Maya Angelou had said, when you know better, you do better. And I think that's the important thing, but it's a process. Knowing and doing are two different things. And I think once you reconcile the two, you're able to be like Lorraine and say, no, I'm my authentic self, and I will, this is me, and I will stand for what I represent, regardless of you know, whatever it is that's being challenged. And I think we all have to consciously work on that, because it's so easy. I mean, all you have to do is look at the media and see what happens to some of the celebs, whether it's Kamala Harris or Harry and Meghan, right? There was an interview published today. There are so many different complexities and layers on the types of judgments that this planet has. And at some point, it's too much. You just need to carry yourself through what's right for you and not be susceptible to all of that.
Yeah, thank you, Isn't it? And very interesting about how that self-discipline shapes because of the judgments that come your way. I also think that there is a part of self-discipline that develops through loss and through the pain of some circumstances we can't have any control over in any way. And Hilary, if I could come back to you, you spoke about losing your mother at such a crucial age.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not only learning from her, but that discipline that it gave you, that point of developing your self-discipline, do you think it was part of that?
It's a very complex question, that, you know, self-discipline can mean just like, you know, think about food, or, you know,
yeah.
This sort of top layer. But yeah, I mean, in my grief, you know, I realized I could sort of self-victimize. You know, you can self-think, you know, or you're a victim, you know, why did this happen to me? Or, you know, self-pity. And but, you know, time heals, as one thing, but it did make me realize, you know, that I had the ability to overcome that grief. I had the inner strength. And so if that's a part of self-discipline, you know, if that's a part of what gives you a drive, then yes, you know, in loss, you know, there are very many things that, you know, how do you deal with it? You just go through it, you know. And that your dreams come true, you know, the belief in yourself and having dreams and faith.
Yeah, but I think for me, where you're talking about that is, it obviously put a marker in the ground for you, like you're saying, not self-victimizing, not going with self-pity and those roots. Where we look at this, well, what is digging deep? It is about, you dig deep when you stay true to your values, as Vision has said. You stay deep and dig deep when you stay back to that point, and your mother's values and her hard work, you chose to reflect always back to that point, I think, as opposed to, as you say, in self-victimization and self-pity. I think the other thing for me around self-discipline, and if I can bring this to you, Lorraine, because of your work within the charity, and particularly within the law side, because there's people there from so many different backgrounds and truly heartbreaking situations as well. But you often find within that discipline of laughter, of humour, of a shared connection. Is that something that you experience within that allows you to come back to your values, that allows you to stay true to yourself, and all of what Bisna and Hilary have been talking about?
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially in the cancer section, because we're going to the hospitals and you're seeing people in various states, a lot of them at end of life, they could die tomorrow. That's the states that we're seeing people in. And we're not having a conversation about death. We're talking about life and, you know, the positive still, even though that it's their final moments, we're still reflecting on the good. And those people, they inspire me on a daily basis. They're my self-discipline, because there's times when I'm moaning about stuff that really is insignificant when I've got so much life to live, and they're there on their final moments. And they just remind me, like, every day they drive me forward to say, like, you can do a good job, you're doing well, your life is so great, even at moments where you're just moaning for the sake of moaning, because we all do it naturally. But they remind you that we are so blessed and we have so much in our lives. They do drive me forward every day. Every message I get, they keep me going.
Yeah. So it's all about, almost in those turbulent times, finding other forces that actually keep you stable. And that maybe is the key of that self-discipline as well. Looking for those positives and opportunities that reinvigorate, that give you strength, that nurture you to allow you to move past these times. Aminata, you talk about you didn't know that you were going on to radio and how your journey was developing. But it seems key to me that once you've got that opportunity, again, the self-discipline of not questioning it, not thinking, do I deserve it, but actually seizing it. I think that, again, is something that we can learn and train ourselves to do. Would you?
That's such a good question. Do you know what? It's difficult. I think when you get an opportunity or you get into a space where you might not necessarily feel qualified or ready for, and I think many a times as women, we can feel that sometimes in certain spaces, a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, should I be here? Am I qualified to be here? And all these things. But you sometimes it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Fake it till you make it, And then a lot of the time,
that's what we're doing now, isn't it?
Just being honest.
Brilliant.
There are a lot of times when I'm on the radio and I'm speaking to someone or I'm having a really important interview, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you just get on with it, because how else will you learn? And sometimes, as Hilary, as you're saying, the failures, the difficulties, the challenging times, that's where character is built. That's where strength is built. So we need those moments 100%. But a lot of the time, you just got to fake it, to be fair.
Yeah. I think that's the key. It's not, I always think when people say faking it, what I actually think is more, you've got to live it. You've got to be prepared to be in a situation where I'm growing literally on the spot. And I always think, like, you get those nature programs where they speed up a plant that starts here and then all of a sudden, boing, and there it is. I always think that when you're in those situations, it's almost like a speeded up nature program, and your growth is accelerated, but you have to commit to it. And I'm back always to this self-discipline, always to this self-belief of you commit to it. Nobody expects you to be the genius, the expert, the one and only. And once you step into that space, people begin to work with you. They're also in that space. So I find that fascinating. Now, we do have a question here from Lucy Davis, and she would like to ask, what advice would you give to women who want to go for senior positions in male-dominated industries? Now, I'm going to just pop this to Bishna and possibly Hilary, if I may, because those are the industries that you've absolutely been in. So Bishna first, what advice would you give?
So I'll talk about this. I'll just give you a bit of context, because quite often, up until more recent years, I've either been the only female in the room, or the youngest person in the room, or the only person of color in the room. And quite frankly, the last one was almost synonymous with my education as well, and the number of schools that I changed. Look, I think, you have to go through a sense of self-awareness. Men are not there because they're dominating and pushing women out. Actually, the statistics show that regardless of which geography, which industry, which sector you're in, men dominate the C-suite, and women only represent somewhere between sort of 11-12% up to about 25-26%, depending on where you are. Now, there are factors that have caused that go way before our generation and way before our existence. And I think what we need to do is first of all understand and not have a men versus women mentality, but really try to understand how we raise awareness to the men who are running the businesses and the corporations to say, this is what we need to get more women into senior positions. I wrote a paper when I was doing a postgrad at the University of Oxford a few years ago. And one of my findings was that women actually block other women, and so it's difficult. And these women are not being malicious. What they're saying is, you know, I've worked so hard to get here. There aren't any other women here, and I'm not going to give up my light to another woman. Now we need to break those barriers. I think if as women we're able to be the one that's representing, you know, your gender or your ethnicity or whatever it is in that boardroom, it's almost, you know, the unwritten responsibility to pay it forward, to create more access. That there aren't enough women there. We're not at 50-50 yet. And until we get there, we have to keep pushing the boundaries and we have to keep opening the doors. So one thing I'd say is take support to get there. Men are very willing. I have to say, some of my best mentors and coaches have been my bosses or former bosses, and they've been male because that's the industry. But they've been fantastic. They're the biggest advocates and allies of the D&I agenda. Explain to them what's needed, why it's important, help them see it through your eyes. And when they do, take their help in creating the right practices and policies. And once you're there, leverage that to pay it forward. Don't hoard it for yourself. You know, we have to keep working at this. We still have such a long way to go. So do it, but do it eyes wide open.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Bishna. Hilary, would you add anything to that? As I say, you would have...
Yeah, it's hard to add. That was so eloquent and so well said. And my experiences have been different. Obviously, financial services and fashion are extreme opposites, I think, in some senses. But, you know, I have to go back to when I was at Leicester Polytechnic and graduated in '68. I had to do a social studies paper. It was a quote. I don't know it's exactly the quote. I can't remember it. It's a long time. Exactly, but it was from Lord Stokes, who was the chairman of ICI, and he said, while women are the childbearing species, they will never be equal to men in the workplace. And I had to write about that in '68. And honestly, you know, that way of thinking, I think, has changed. Hopefully it's changed.
Yeah.
But, you know,
yeah.
It is a big factor for women, you know, balancing their, you know, children, home life, and business. But to get to the top in corporate life, which is dominated by men, it's always the same things that we've been talking about. You know, it's determination. It's keeping a clear eye on the goal, you know, on the finish line. And hoping that, you know, you don't, I think when women think about men and women and affirmative action and people choose women, you know, just because there's a woman, I'm not so sure that's right. You know, I think that we have to believe in ourselves to the point that we don't really need that, you know, and that we as women help one another, as Manjit said, as sisters, you know, and that we reinforce one another as a group. And that's what the feminist action, you know, a revolution in women through the pill, a lot of that, and through the 60s and 70s, and was about, you know, that we reinforce one another. And you know, and so I think that's a big factor. But you know, if you got your eye on the ball and you're good at what you do, you know, then let's hope it will be 50-50 in, you know, the near future. It's going to take a while.
Thank you, Hilary, and I think absolutely so important that you're always paving a way for somebody behind you, 100%. And we have another question here from Sophie, and I'd like Lorraine and Aminata to have an answer to this, if you may, which was around, did you take finances into account when considering your career and its trajectory, or was it alone about the passion and impact? Maybe even a mixture of both.
I'm going to say for me, I didn't take finances into account. I just knew I wanted to do it and I needed to find a way how to do it. Obviously, it wasn't about, I wasn't going to create stupid debt. The debt I was going to create is purely to achieve my aim. So I knew my debt was going to be student loan and my barrister training course. And so I come from a working class family, like nobody's been uni before. So this money wasn't there on a plate. So the student debt had to come, and I had to do jobs whilst I was working as well. But I think sometimes we worry about too much about, there's this stigma, oh, I don't want to get lots of student debt, I don't want to get these further career debts. But sometimes you have to get them to enable you to do the job that you need to do. It took me until I was 34, so 2 years ago, to pay off my student debt. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be doing the job I am now. So I think if there is something that you know you want to do, work towards doing it. Don't be afraid with this. You're going to be, I hear too many times now, you're going to be $9,000 a year or whatever it is in debt. If it's something you want to do and you really want to work on it, you'll pay that debt off and you'll get your career 100%.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Aminata, would you add anything to that?
I think for me, it's definitely been passion that's driven a lot of what I've done, because I have to feel like I'm adding a sense of value to whatever space that I'm in. Otherwise, I'll be sad and very, very depressed. So it is very important for me to choose passion. However, on my journey, I have had to put passion to one side and get my practical, sensible hat on, especially when it comes to paying bills and making sure that I can put food on the table and provide for my daughter and, pay for extracurricular activities and things like that. So it's definitely difficult now. And I'm going to share this only because I think a lot of the time we get people on to share, and we assume that they've arrived, and that's why certain people speak. So I want to share this because I feel like this is a great question. I'm on a journey. I'm on a journey, and I feel like I'm at the beginning of my career. And I've done great stuff, but I do feel like I'm at the infancy of my career. So for me, it's about making sure that I get in the right environment. So even if I'm doing an entry-level job, if I'm doing an intern job, it's not really paying that well. So long as I'm in the right environment and that space is going to propel me to where I want to go, I probably will take the lower paid job. I will take a job that will. So I'm, currently doing radio here and there. I've got another job that I'm doing like 3 different jobs at the moment to make sure that 1, I'm in the right space, but 2, I'm also able to bring, food to the table. So that would be my advice. Follow your passion 110%. Get that entry-level job if you just need to get in that space, because you'll meet with the right people, but also, do what you need to do to make sure you're covering your overheads, and 100% that drive will get you to where you need to go.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that everybody on this call would have in common is it's not been a step by step. I had this salary, then it went higher, and then it went higher, and then it went higher. I'm absolutely convinced that every one of us on this call has done a job we would never choose to do, but at the time it paid the bills, which allowed that passion and that development, if you like, to grow. Because passion without food on the table and a roof over your head can't grow, because the pressure of that is just so much. But I've got I'm just looking at the questions. Jan has asked, did you all go to DMU University, and have any of you gone on to other further education? Well, certainly you all went to DMU, because otherwise you're a fraud. You shouldn't be on the call. Who has gone on to do further education?
Banjo.
Yeah, I mean, after leaving DMU, I went to Bristol to do my barrister training course, but that was only because it wasn't offered at DMU, otherwise I would have stayed there. So yeah, that's where I went afterwards.
Yeah. And Bishna, you've gone on to do more, haven't you?
I did a postgrad at Said at the University of Oxford, but also there's been a lot of other education that's been relevant for the job, so exams of different sorts. And I think it's really important to keep learning, because what happens is, when you go back, you meet new people who are like-minded on so many levels, and you can learn so much about their journeys. And they're people that you wouldn't connect with otherwise. So on my program at Oxford, obviously it was many years after I left DMU, there were people in their 60s and 70s doing things like Hillary, sold off very successful businesses, really lovely insights into the world outside, other industries. There were people who were just kind of at my stage in life, people a little bit further forward. And I think it's really enriching in different ways. And through that, you also make friends for life as well. So I think it's nice to do if you can. And then, of course, if the subject helps your day job, then obviously it makes absolute sense. But these things always come at a cost of time, a financial commitment. So, you know, to some of the points we heard earlier from Lorraine, I'd say just make sure that you're balancing it, and also from Aminata, make sure it's the right thing, and it's not going to distract you from your priorities of progressing in your career, and also making sure that your financial aspirations are being managed.
Yeah, and I think in beginning to sum all of this up, and those answers have been absolutely fantastic. We have some lovely comments back in our little chat here about, you know, thank you for those answers. But I think everything that you talk about, your passion, your warmth, your compassion, you know, for the people around you and what you've achieved, to me, you are people who always bring something to the table. And I think when we come back to looking at overcoming adversity, what you are really skilled at is taking things off your table that don't serve you. That's the wisdom, if you like, that you've developed, even whether you're at the start of a journey or not. This empowerment for yourself to say, that doesn't serve me and I'm going to not do it. And I think that is an incredible skill, and it's something that's come out in everything that you've been saying. Now, we're coming to the end of this call, and just like very, very quick, if I may, just one incident from each of you about what's been inspirational for you. We've got 4 minutes, so make it quick. Okay, Hilary, something that was inspirational.
Going to Mother Teresa's orphanage in Calcutta in 70.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow, brilliant.
That, you know, because you know, there's lots of things that have inspired me. Travel is, and lots of people, you know, but that truly made me realize that, you know, you got to step it up here, you know, this is truly a sort of out of, you know, experience. It was very inspirational. And India and places, you know, where there's a lot of poverty, and you see how people make it, you know, and happy and laughing. That's inspirational, you know.
Yeah, I think it's that inspiration of looking outside of yourself, actually, to stop almost listening to your own conversation. You know, we can become very boring of ourselves, can't we? So it's listening to that. No, not at all. Now, ladies, I'm very conscious as time is now going to run away with us. So I wanted to just leave you with this, because I think what you've shared, what you've spoken about, has been in itself inspiration. I know the people that have been listening in, and this will be replayed on our YouTube channel. That is the inspiration. And for me, there is a quote by Margaret Mead, and it says, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has." And I want to say to you for today, thank you so much for giving us your time, for putting all the prep and everything in doing this, because I truly know that through your stories, you will have changed lives of people you have never met. Somewhere, somebody will watch this, and it will help them turn that challenge into a solution. It will give them a taste of belief that tomorrow will be better. And I truly believe that the power in just you as a small group today and what you've done will have that impact. And thank you so much for all of your time, your openness and your honesty, and in sharing your journey with us. Now, as we come to the end of this, I would also like to just highlight other ways that alumni work with DMU and what we're doing. And we have alumni that have been part of the Choose to Challenge campaign. And as it's International Women's Day, and to close this wonderful event with you all, there will now be some more videos and excerpts that talk about this Choose to Challenge. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to do it again in the future at some point. So bye-bye for now. Thank you all so very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
My name is Emily Fenton and I work for DMU Sport as a sport project coordinator in participation. I choose to continue to challenge inequality within society, especially in sport, through education and representation, because together we can create an inclusive environment where everyone is treated equally, no matter how they identify.
Hi, my name is Claire Bainan and I'm the Talent Attraction Manager for Enterprise Rent-A-Car and alumni of DMU. As we head towards International Women's Day, I just wanted to share with you who is my role model. There's been many at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, including our CEO, Chrissy Taylor. I also wanted to share with you a lady called Sheryl Sandberg, and she is the COO of Facebook and founder of leanin.org. And she did a TED talk probably about 10 years ago, and as I was rising through the ranks at Enterprise, it really did inspire me and really reframed my thought process as I was working my way through up through the organisation. And she has real three main points to make. The first one is to make sure you sit at the table. The second one is to make sure you make your partner a real partner. And the third is don't leave before you leave.